Mother's call me Cristiano, Mr. Ronaldo, I'm on Nintendo.
Okay, hello and welcome to episode 9 of Olivia's Money Show. I wish I could say I had planned that, the 9th episode on the 9th of August, but I did not. So some of you might have seen today is about couples, relationships. This is not just romantic couples. Friendships, a lot of friendships are really impacted by weird money feelings, and I don't say weird in a judgy way. I say weird in like an unspoken way. Family members, a lot of these topics come up in this way. But so all of my episodes are about relationships to money, people's relationships to money. But today I'm zeroing in on relationships between people and money. So that triangle, square, pentagon, however large a group of people are talking about money and making decisions about money together. So I'm going to get personal today, not just about my life, but about some stories that clients and colleagues have shared with me. Because I think by now a lot of people who are interested in improving their personal finance habits or their skills, they've heard of the money date. I could do some research about some origination of the money date. I'm not sure if someone coined it. It's oh boy, if it's trademarked, I didn't know. I don't know what to do. So there have been tons of fun ideas about money dates, lighting candles, setting music, having a certain, always the same kind of tea or something like that when you're doing your own date with money and checking in on your finances. I'm always a personal fan of dancing. I set a 15-minute timer. So if I'm working on my money grit, I don't sit for longer than 15 minutes now. I will be honest, sometimes I snooze the timer and then my neck and my elbows regret it because of being on the mouse. But in theory, I'm a strong proponent of the dance break being incorporated into our money dates. So I'll talk in a bit about how some common themes I've seen of how couples I work with or have heard about teeter in and out of balance with how they handle money together, but a little more from my week, because I want to be transparent about how easily we, or in this case, I, forget to return to the language of money, to return to the money date, the power of setting aside, carving out that time with your money and anyone else that's related to the money. So my stepdaughter was here for the summer, and as you know, so is my grandmother. And so over the summer, I just worked on our spending plans when everyone was out of the house so that we could soak up every moment we did have together. So I would go into Money Grid, I'd go boom, boom, boom. I'd ask my partner a few questions about his plans and then consider it done. So then this week we were driving home from the airport, my stepdaughter having just left, which is always one of the 4 toughest and saddest days of our year. And so on this hot, sticky, very hot East Coast drive home, it's not surprising that money stickiness also came up. And I thought my partner and I were fighting about some hot soup that I didn't get to eat as much of as I wanted to. And he always gets so raw and just opened up about how he felt like there wasn't enough money in our spending plan for what he needs for his bicycles. Slight background, he is a cyclist, he rarely drives, obviously he drove to the airport, but he has ridden his bike to the airport to pick her up. And instead he'll go 11 miles each way on a bicycle to see his parents or do errands, whatever needs to be done. So I started to get defensive and confused because we had talked about things for his bikes that he needed this month. We obviously have a category for that in our spending plan. And he had, each time he would bring up something like, oh, maybe I'll get the cheaper parts, and then in the winter I'll get the stuff that'll cover for the winter. And I felt like I kept encouraging him to get the one now that will really meet his needs, because that's what a spending plan is for, is meeting your needs and wants. So, but because we hadn't sat down together and looked at the numbers, he was left with his older feelings from the past of scarcity, from times that we couldn't afford to upgrade his bikes and when we were in a different financial situation. And so this is not going to just be confession hour. I tried to make that part of the story short, but I want to be really honest and transparent about how our relationships with money are ever evolving. And even someone who preaches, yes, sit down with whoever is involved in your money and talk about it. It's so easy to forget that, or, you know, in those, so I want people to know that in those moments when you don't get it right, that's actually perfect, because it brings up an opportunity for you to listen to what fears or grievances or triggers are still alive in you. And so I'm grateful for the very hot, sticky, exploding drive, because then it opened us up to then my realizing, oh, I haven't shared all the clarity that we have about the spending plan. So that's the bearing all personal part. But I want to touch in on some common relationship dynamics that I see working with couples through money coaching, and particularly outside of spending and saving differences between romantic partners, because that often is a factor in relationships. Some people talk about their people being on a continuum of being a saver or spender, and some people are very extreme on both ends or one end. And how do we match up with people that we're going to forge our lives together with? So that's a very common dynamic, is that there are differences in people's inclinations to spend or save. And there are infinite, exponentially infinite balancing acts that happen when people are handling money together, making decisions together. But I want to throw out just some themes that I've seen. A lot of things that even seasoned marriage counselors don't quite have on their radar, or if it comes up in a session, they don't quite know how to help people get to the root of those feelings, so that then they can open that conversation and move forward. So people who come to me are they are becoming the chief family financial officers, the CFFOs of their lives. Now, a lot of the times, the person who's making sure the bills get paid and the right amount of money is in the checking account are not the primary breadwinners. Sometimes it is the higher earner who manages the money. And one common pitfall, like I experienced this week, is often that person will assume, in my case, I assumed that because I knew our money was okay for the month, because we have the annual spending plan, so we have that projection of the whole year. So I knew it was okay, but I didn't share that. And so that's a pitfall that happens a lot, is just assuming because I know our money is okay, that the whole family magically has that sense too. So that's a common pitfall when the person who is bringing in the majority of the money is also the one who manages the money. Now, I've seen a common theme when it's not the person who puts in, well, not necessarily more hours, because that doesn't necessarily equate to higher paychecks, but the person who either has more deductions taken out of their paycheck or their salary is smaller, they have then taken on the task of managing money in the effort to balance out the workload. So sometimes there's this sense that if one person brings in so much more money, then they shouldn't also have to be the one to manage it. And often this is a decision made regardless of strengths and weaknesses and who's better suited to managing the money or broaching conversations about it. So one thing I've seen that comes up a lot in that situation where the CFFO is managing the money and not making as much of it, is that they don't want to rock the boat. So they may feel overwhelmed with the tasks at hand and then miss payment deadlines, and then they feel less responsible, and then they want even less to burden their partner and bring it to their attention, and it becomes this spiral, or as Karen McCall calls it, the money drain, which I guess would go in the opposite direction in Australia. This spiral of feeling tension and insecurity about how they're doing at managing the money, which is already compounded by how they're feeling about what they might be financially bringing to the relationship. In other cases, people are very happy with how much they're bringing financially to the relationship, but there are details when I've worked with people in coaching that they don't want to share with their partners, because there's this unspoken feeling once I work through with them, they realize, well, I don't want to say it because I don't want them to think about how much I'm contributing. So they might feel secure in their financial contribution, but they have feelings or ideas about what the other person thinks. And so that's one of the ways I've seen communication lines break down really fundamentally, because then there's this back and forth vagueness that gets reinforced by each participant, say. Other times people either don't want to look at or talk about the imbalances of who pays for what. I work with some couples who keep their money separate, and they've worked out ways that they share in household costs and things that are needed. And often a person who is contributing less doesn't want to bring up those issues with their partner for fear of being found out that they're paying less. So it's a similar situation in terms of how comfortable they are with what's happening for them financially at that time. Now, this is between friends too. I know in my 20s, creating art with friends and splitting bills, this grew to be things with different friends that were really difficult, and either would have caused tense conversations or we would never talk about it, and then that sort of added to emotional distance and they grew on each other. So I realized that opening these conversations can be like jumping in a cold pool, and that it can feel much more comfortable to just not talk about it, keep the status quo going. So because I realize that can be so difficult, I want to give you 2 nuggets of other ways, because I always want you to go to the numbers, I'm always going to say that, but other ways to really get to the deeper parts of our money relationships. So one of them is gratitudes. I know a lot of relationship guides, experts, specialists, maybe that's the word, talk about, oh, share 3 gratitudes a night with your partner, or have a gratitude friend that you call in 5 minutes, gratitude, 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 good night, great. So my husband and I remember that about twice a month, and it is great, it really helps. So I just want to give you another little twist about it that you might think of it at a different time of the day, is to share gratitudes about what money has done for you in that day. And so there's always something. If there's any food in the house, it was from money. If you were home all day, you didn't leave the house, and you looked out the window and there are perennial plants that you bought however many years ago, that was from money. In a much less privileged world, if the food that's in your house is from going to a food bank, that is part of a bigger story. If someone bought the food and there was leftover food and somebody took the effort to donate that food and someone put in the time to organize that food bank, and so that's a money gratitude. So there are always these multitudes of perspectives and sides of a money gratitude, and it sometimes opens up the window in a different way that de-escalates some tension about money, because you're just bringing it back to your basic needs, your basic feelings. And it can be very triggering just to talk about gratitude. So if that is the case, then I dare you to look at what feels triggering about that, why you don't want to bring that up, what can of worms you're scared is going to burst open, because I can almost promise you there's even more of a nugget in there once you ask yourself that question, which is a vulnerable and tough question to be willing to ask yourself. So I applaud you already for taking on my dare. And then a second idea is to share money memories. I work with couples a lot who are very clear. They say, oh, well, her parents were this way about money, and so she's triggered in these ways. But at some point, those understandings, even though they help us understand each other, can become more like sound bites and less like touchstones that continue to foster connection. Yeah. So the other prompt for today is to ask your friend or your coworker or a partner, ask your journal, if that's who you make money decisions with, by writing it out to see what your wants and needs truly are. Do this with your kids, with your aunt, your grandkids, is to ask someone about their favorite money memories. Or if you think you know everything about your partner, then pick an age range. Say, what's a money memory that you have from ages 15 to 17, or from your 50s, or from your 20s, and you start to get this picture that's much more robust and colorful, that then helps you see the person that you're making money decisions with, as opposed to just feeling reactive. It helps you have a more holistic perspective view. I think, we're almost at short and sweet. I think I may have bumped over past to a little salty, but this is the end. Please share this with any therapists you know, marriage, family counselors, people you know who are embarking on a relationship. I have this fun, a series, a fun guided tour through money for people who are making a romantic commitment to each other, to help people understand, if you start talking about this now, it just gets easier. So share this with anyone that you think could be relative. If you are on YouTube, you can follow me. There's a button popping up, and that tells the Googles that more people want this kind of information, which I want to get it to them. And that wasn't a completely accurate English correct communication sentence. I'm gonna go with it. And then once you follow me, then you can send a link of this video to someone. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing if you are, and go talk about money, please. Go forth to money.